Dr. Harold Shipman was a British general practitioner who, for reasons that are entirely unknown, he became one of the medical malpractices ever on record in the most astonishing and frightening manner. It has gone undetected to the extent that almost at the end of last century he came under exposure as an element of one killing spree. It was a saga of treachery and manipulation, as well as one of horror in the most gruesome way he handled the trust accorded to him in his doctor's role. Harold Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. He had 4 siblings. He was the best student and went for medical school at Leeds University. In 1970, he started working as a general practitioner. The colleagues and patients loved working with him. He got the reputation of being such a dedicated doctor and, more importantly, an empathetic doctor. However, during his successful practice, gradually Shipman became an unhealthy obsession with death and even control over his patients. Shipman started the killing spree in the 1970s, but only went public to the rest of the world in the 1990s about all of the full extent of his killing. All the women were elderly, while a few men did at one time fall into the hands of Shipman. However, morphine proved to be the deadliest overdose of painkillers that he was administering to his patients. He would administer them the drug, and the victims would die apparently under natural causes. They also died, in large part alone, which facilitated the cover-up of Shipman's crime. He covered his tracks through his medical knowledge. He would doctor the medical records to appear as if the patients died because of natural causes, such as a heart attack or stroke. Shipman would always write death certificates that were not really suspicious, and since he was a trusted doctor, the interests of the authorities were not raised. He targeted the weak, old, and sick patients with a plan to benefit from their weakness. Most of the time, the patient himself was not aware that he was receiving morphine injections. This was even more sinister. Using his medical knowledge, Shipman could very accurately govern and administer undetected lethal dosages for many years. It had been raising suspicion since 1998. When the undertaker in the same town started noticing the many deaths of Shipman's patients. The pattern became increasingly clearer. It was a lot of older women who were dying very suspiciously and under rather mysterious circumstances under Shipman. In 1998, a woman named Kathleen Grundy died after visiting Shipman one morning. Her family thus raised some suspicions as it became clear that her will had been tampered with, allotting a vast amount of money to Shipman. It is then through the investigation of this cause of death that followed. In 1999, it was found during a deep investigation that Shipman had tried to change the will of Kathleen Grundy, and he had murdered her to enter the estate. Police officers began investigating the entire practice of Shipman. It was discovered that Shipman was killing his patients for more than 2 decades. Over 200 victims were established. However, some allegations were that the numbers could be even higher. He was arrested in 2000, charged with murder of 15 patients. The case, the prosecution had to prove in court, was very long and very complicated because it needed to prove that death was not natural and it was a doctor who knowingly killed his patients. Further, it is found that the number of people killed by him is at least 215, although some estimate the figure much higher. He was proved guilty on counts of murders amounting to 15 and was to spend the rest of his life in the prison. Except for those, he also had so many charges in respect to forging wills and similar other things. The medical world was left stunned all over because such a well-recognized doctor, that he actually killed patients whom he can treat, whom had fully trusted him as well. He was found dead in his cell in January 2004, 4 years after the date of his conviction. The Suicide Act involved him suspending himself by using a piece of bed sheet. So, closure was brought on one of the darkest events in the medical history. The Shipman case brought tremendous influence over the entire medical fraternity and had brought major changes with regard to checkups and controls on practicing doctors. Inquiry post the conviction in regard to the failures within the system allowed Shipman to murder his patients undetected for so long led the United Kingdom GP's registration to follow stricter controls. Altogether, Harold Shipman killed over 200 individuals throughout his career. He definitely was one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the world, and inasmuch as he imprinted such a mark for the trustworthiness that he gained from his patients or even from the medical system, it is relatively easy to see and understand how unchecked authority led people astray and against their better nature.